and hear your thoughts as always. Now we move to our next story, where in Kuwait, the Fire Force has announced that 2 of its officers were killed while performing duties in a post on the social media platform X, without providing details on the circumstances of their deaths. The incident comes as Kuwait continues to respond to a wave of hostile missile and drone attacks launched from Iran following US and Israeli strikes on Iran. Kuwaiti defense forces have been engaged in intercepting these drones and missiles, including targets near civilian infrastructure such as Kuwait International Airport, where fires broke out earlier. The deaths of these officers reflect the broader spillover of the US-Israel war on Iran across the Gulf, with neighbouring states reporting attacks and interceptions as regional tensions remain elevated. Authorities have not confirmed whether the officers were killed by direct hostile action or as a result of responding to these interceptions. Now joining us live we have Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, who's a Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst located in Kuala Lumpur. Collins, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Ruby.
So we don't have a cause of death here of these 2 officers. How could these deaths affect Kuwait's involvement in this conflict? From a security and strategy viewpoint, often in wartime, the population rallies around feelings of nationalism and the leadership in the country. So could these deaths perhaps intensify these feelings, or perhaps give the population a feeling of, hey, we've just lost 2 of our own, we need to back away from this conflict to reduce further risk? In what direction could we see this go?
Well, definitely we will see some kind of resentment, and of course the sentiments on the ground from the people, hitting civilian infrastructures, and especially involving civilian death tolls. Those are the things that will trigger nationalist sentiments and the call to protect the national sovereignty and the right of self-defense. And of course, how we have seen Kuwait still remaining as one of the most important US logistical hubs in the region, in the Middle East. And by striking these bases and facilities, of course, Iran is trying to send a signal that these supply chains are vulnerable, of course, bases are vulnerable, and that all these Gulf states they cannot remain insulated from the war, by also providing this access to the US forces. But it remains to be seen because it's one of the most also critical timelines for any push for de-escalation. And as we have seen, the statement, the apology being sent, and how that will hold ground, or how that will turn out on the ground, will still remains to be seen. But I don't foresee any kind of profound changes from most of these Gulf states, including Kuwait, on how they will respond to these strikes, and whether there will be any escalations. I don't think there will be any kind of possible escalations for now. And of course, they will still need, they are still being trapped in this strategic dilemma of needing the US security umbrella, while at the same time also not being seen as, being antagonistic towards Iran, for risking these future escalations. But as of now, of course, these are strong signals. But any kind of further responses will also depend on the subsequent moves by Iran. But I don't think this direct incident will spur any kind of profound, direct threats from Kuwait to Iran for now, and things still will remain in a controlled manner. Ruby.
We're also due to hear about an Arab League meeting today between the Gulf states and, of course, other countries in the area. Now, how might these deaths affect this meeting? Of course, Kuwait could raise some concerns, but do you believe that the countries in the region are now looking back at this past week and kind of calculating the costs of proceedings over the next couple of weeks if this war does continue?
Definitely, it depends on how soon you come to this threshold of revisiting the whole structure for the past 1 week of how the strikes have impacted the notion of these states being seen as the buffer or the fortress of stability. Now that they have been getting this notion of this security hope or security umbrella from the US in terms of getting this kind of deterrence, but and those kind of perspective and notion have been smashed to smithereens now with this retaliations from Iran, of course hitting these countries hard, especially UAE and Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Dubai being the international hub for travel, and those images have been shattered. But of course, also there's still this threshold, this limit of the risk calculation as to the extent of the any responses by these Gulf states towards Iran, and how this will turn out in the long term. Because for now, they are still in the the mode of calculations and recalibrations, and we don't see any major movements or retaliations or any threats of hard-hitting responses from these Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia. And that is very reassuring in terms of preventing any escalations moving forward. But of course, there will be some kind of responses from the Arab League as well as from the Gulf states. And but stopping short of any moves or perspective that can be seen to escalate this further. And of course, both sides will want also the continuous U.S. presence to remain, to have this kind of deterrent impact, while at the same time, I think they are also cognizant of the fact that these are the costs that will need to be absorbed for siding with the U.S. and of course for hosting U.S. bases and U.S. Security apparatus in their countries. But and whether this cost is worthwhile for the short-term period, and this will also be calculated against the needs of the future in the long-term capacity when there's a new kind of structure or regime or government in place in Iran, and how the post-conflict situation will turn out. So all this will need to be taken into account, and those are in the minds of the head of states during the meeting. But I don't see any kind of major profound shifts for now.
Mm-hmm. Collins, please stay with us as we move to our next story.